PETG, or more widely speaking, the range of copolyesters. It's like PLA and ABS had a love child with all the best bits from either one. Copolyesters have a good mix of properties and have become my personal favorite, but there are some things it can't do or will need extra tuning for. Let's go through those. There is a bit of confusion around what you should call these materials. Is it PET, PETG, copolyester, or CPE? Well, pretty much only Ultimaker calls them CPE, which is just a fancy abbreviation for copolyester. Many manufacturers have their own brand names for various types of copolyesters, be it Colorfab XT, HT or Engen, Tallman T-Glaze, or simply PETG. PET itself, or polyethylene terephthalate, is actually not what you'll typically 3D print. That would be PETG, or the glycol modified version of PET. The glycol content keeps the plastic from crystallizing, making it a bit softer, more chewy, and having it melt at a lower temperature. It also makes it translucent. That is pretty much ideal for 3D printing on the common machines. PETG prints around 230 degrees, pure PET at 260 degrees or more. Aside from that fundamental difference, filament producers can also modify the plastic to have different properties for how they perform while being printed or in the finished printed part. No two PETG materials are going to be exactly the same, but typically they're pretty close when it comes to how they need to be printed or how the parts will behave. Okay, so how do these need to be printed? Well, for a base tune, grab a PLA profile you know works for you, or simply your slicer's default. Then reduce the part cooling fan speed a bit, 20 to 50% work well for most of my printers, and then adjust the temperature to match what your filament manufacturer suggests. If there's no recommended temperature, try 230 degrees Celsius and increase it if you see bad layer adhesion or extruder jams, or decrease it if you see excessive stringing or curling or other overheating artifacts. On the topic of stringing, most PETGs will want to string quite a bit, because even the molten PETG still doesn't easily tear, but will keep pulling that fine string out of your nozzle. It's a good idea to increase the retract length even before your first print. Maybe add a millimeter for a direct extruder or 2 or 3 for a Bowden. If you still get strings, you either have the option of just burning them off with a hot air gun or tuning your printer's retraction even further. But you can't just increase retraction length like crazy, because you'll end up with blobs instead. What you should look into is the retraction speed settings. Try a slightly faster or a slightly slower one, and it might just be that last piece of the puzzle to help you get a clean print. What's always going to help with both stringing and blobbing is increasing the travel speed between retracts. Travel moves should always be as fast as your printer can handle, because it's going to give the hot end as little of a chance of oozing and going out of the intended plastic flow situation as possible, if that makes sense. Your printer's firmware should know how fast it can reliably go, so you can actually set the travel speed in your slicer to some obscene value and let your printer handle the rest. One more note about printing copolyesters. Whatever you do, don't print them directly onto glass. Even though it's kind of hard to stick copolyester parts together when you actually want them to stick, they will actually fuse to some glass print surfaces and take chunks out when you try to remove them. PEI and other films are a similar story, so I'd always recommend using some extra layer of adhesive on top. So with those base print settings, PETGs and other similar copolyester materials should easily make for clean, strong and attractive prints. So what do you use it for? Well, anything really. PETGs can do most things a PLA would be able to do when it comes to printing detailed parts or larger ones without warping too much. It also has many of the upsides of ABS, like being reasonably temperature resistant up to around 70 or 80 degrees Celsius, which is a bit lower than ABS, but still good enough for many parts that you use with motors or electronics. Prusa even uses them for everything on the Mark III now. PETGs are also really strong and came out with consistently impressive results in the Halloween tests, but their strength, even though it is good, it feels a bit less predictable than other materials, because some copolyester prints like to shatter instead of gradually failing. What can make this behavior much worse is when you use wet PETG. Through a process called hydrolysis, the water steaming up as the plastic gets heated will essentially tear apart the polymer chains and make the plastic more brittle. So keep it dry, and if you feel like a spool of filament has been degraded, chuck it into the oven at 60 degrees for an hour or two. Copolyesters also come with a huge benefit of being really clear and transparent if, of course, you get the transparent versions. With the right settings, you can get some amazing looking parts out of it. And just like ABS, you can use metalworking tools with PETG prints, no problem, but painting or gluing parts can be a bit tricky. If you ever try to glue or paint a plastic water bottle, you'll know that nothing sticks to this stuff. If you need to connect two copolyester parts, there are some options for solving welding, but there are some pretty nasty substances involved. What the company 3M recommends is a few things. With any adhesive, you can prepare the surface either by roughing it up with some sandpaper and then cleaning and degreasing it well, or by actually activating the surface with a bath in 80 degrees Celsius caustic soda for a few minutes. But please be really careful when trying that and follow the usual safety rules. After that, they recommend regular superglue, polyurethane based resins, or tape. If you've ever stuck a GoPro to anything, you'll know how well that VXP tape sticks to stuff, so the chances are good that it'll actually stick well enough even to PETG parts straight from a printer. But in the same spirit, PETG is a much more friendly plastic than some others. It doesn't smell when printing, and many filaments are actually food safe if printed right. It's resistant against many chemicals, including, surprise, glycol. The hard tubing for PC water cooling, where glycol is a common water additive, is actually often made from PETG these days. Also, PETG and copolyesters themselves are UV and weather resistant, so the parts are going to stay strong and usable outside, but the color might fade after a while in the sun. Overall, it's just nice to print, and for most use cases it's still close enough to PLA where it's no big hassle to print, but still gives you parts that are actually stronger than ABS and come with almost the same temperature resistance. And your good base level PETG isn't even that much more expensive than PLA, but of course you can get it in all sorts of specialized properties and in price ranges if you're into that. Let me know what your experiences with this relatively new material are. I know I like it a ton, and it has basically replaced ABS for me. On the topic of ABS, a few of you have commented on the last video that I completely left out vapor smoothing for ABS. So I actually rarely vapor smooth a print because it's a bit too much of a hassle. But I'd really be interested to hear from you all if that's something that you do to your prints regularly, or if it's just a maybe twice a year kind of thing. If you like this video, let YouTube know that you do by giving it a thumbs up or by subscribing. You can directly support the channel through Patreon or by buying things through the affiliate links below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.